folks, spring is in the air here in Baltimore, as you can tell from this lovely rainy downcast day that we're having. But something else is pretty special, because during springtime we typically move stuff around in the yard to make room for our beloved Thomas event that comes here. But in moving stuff, it's also revealed something pretty neat that's behind me. We'll get into that in this episode. In the 40s, here in the United States, there was a giant uptick in the amount of automobiles being sold in America. And so that also raises a question, a conundrum for the railroads, which played a large role in moving these automobiles from A, the manufacturing plant, to B, the dealership. And so the railroads, again, played a massive role in this by transporting them. First in these box cars where they were kind of slung up there at a 45-degree angle. We'll flash a photo up there for you. But also, eventually in the 50s, they would go to what they called auto rack trains, where you could fit two tiers, two levels. You could fit anywhere from 6 to 8 cars in these. And so that's great. The railroad solved the problem. But wintertime created another problem for them. And that problem would be icicles. So picture a tunnel portal. Begins to snow, freezing rain, what have you. Eventually that stuff freezes and turns into icicles. As we all know, icicles can wreak havoc to glass windshields, sheet metal, all that makes up a car. So the railroad said, okay, we're noticing we're getting some damage to these cars and it's costing us money. So the B&O said, all right, well, how do we solve this problem? And eventually they came to the conclusion, let's make what they called an icebreaker car. So back in the early 40s, the base model of this car would be an N41. It was just a 2-bay hopper that the B&O took in 1964. They took 10 of these, shipped them off to the Kaiser shops in West Virginia, and they said, all right guys, go ahead and make us these A-frame type structures up here on both sides, in this case on the east and west end, to knock down any of these icicles that would form and potentially do some serious damage to the automobiles that were being transported. So again, from 1964, 10 of these came out of revenue service. Their numbers were changed to IB1 through 10, and behind me is IB9. As far as I can surmise, this is the only one that still remains. If I'm wrong, go ahead and drop something in the comment section, but I feel fairly certain this is the last one to still remain here. And what I find fascinating was they went from being revenue cars to non-revenue cars. So originally they were painted in that typical black hopper scheme. And then they went to this very bright yellow. And that's so that way in yards, if they were parked in yards, switch crews would know not to move these cars. They were to stay where they were on whatever, siding they were on. So pretty interesting stuff. I find that pretty fascinating. The B&O said, hey, we have a problem. How do we solve it? And they come up with this. So we'll go ahead and take a look at some more details of this car. Again, I think it's fascinating. They're fun to look at, and it's a giant modification to a car that helps solve a giant problem. So as I mentioned to you, these cars used to be hopper cars, and here's no more proof of that than the original number to it. That's kind of cool. So what do we got here? 828966. So that would have been the hopper number of this particular car before it got turned into the icebreaker as you see it. So this would have been what they call the A end, and if we go around the other side, we'll see the B end of this. All right, so I've moved to the other side of the car here. This is the B end. So you can see the brake wheel up here, some of the brake piping that comes down. And here is all of the brake equipment itself, the valves and whatnot, and the cylinders, reservoirs. So again, cars have two ends, A and B. And B is for the brake, and A is just, well, it's not the B. So, and again, so this is kind of neat. These would have had, these were, again, built in the 40s, so you would have had the journal bearings here. Standard AAR trucks here. Here's some of the hopper itself, so kind of a neat little view. So you got two of them on each side. Undo right here. And here's the other side. So why don't we go up top and take a look? So something else to point out here is that these cars would have been ballasted in order to weigh them down, to make sure that the icicles there on the tunnels would not just rip the top parts off here. So you can see this car still has some of the ballast and some other stuff in here. But yes, these cars would have been ballasted, and I believe most of them were ballasted to 77,000 pounds, if I'm not mistaken, from all the reading that I've done here. But so I'm up here on the B end, so the brake end. You can get a pretty good look at these structures. I mean, again, welded together in some places and then riveted to the frame. As you can see here, here's one of those rivets. So again, a mess of both rivets and welding to hold all this together. Pretty neat stuff. But yeah, so this top part here, so the height from the car, from the base, we'll call it, from the very top of the hopper itself to the top of the structure would have been 15 feet. That's what they welded and riveted together in order to help get to the very top of those portals to break down the icicles and other stuff that was forming there that could have done damage to those automobiles. So we talked about the birth and the creation of these cars. We should note that the auto rack cars, the reason for life of the icebreakers, those auto rack cars begin to become more and more fully enclosed as we get to the mid-80s. So when these icebreakers first came into service in 1965, those auto rack cars were pretty much open to the elements, hence the need for these things. But like I said, by the mid-80s, they became more fully enclosed and resemble what we see now on the Class 1s. So by 85, 86, these began to become phased out. Some of them turned into hoppers again or were cut up for scrap. So we are very lucky that we have IB9 here representing the B&O Ice Breakers. So the next time you come to the B&O Railroad Museum and you take the train ride out west, make sure you take a look in the direction of the restoration shop and you'll see IB9 hanging out. You can say, hey, I know a little bit more about this particular car. So this is Trevor from History on the Move. Make sure you stay tuned. We got some more fun videos coming your way. Thanks and take care.